Insights from overlooked scriptures that help us trust what we don't yet know. The insights in this book will equip you to trust that God is alive and working, even when you don't understand what is happening. If your faith grows to be confident in what you don't yet see, you will be more comfortable and possibly even excited to lean into the unknown. I am convinced that what God has in mind for your life is exponentially more than you can imagine. And there's a good chance that if God's timing seems wrong or too late, it will make your story outshine anything you could write. 1. More is happening than you can see. A painting from the latter part of the 15th century in the National Gallery in London bothered many who saw it, until a 20th century art critic looked more deeply into the story behind the painting, and that caused everything to change. The painting was called The Virgin and Child with Saints Jerome and Dominic by Filippino Lippi, and it had many of the elements of a masterpiece from the Renaissance era. But critics couldn't get past the obvious mistakes in the details. When scrutinized, even by a slightly trained eye, the whole painting looked off. The direction of Mary's glance, the awkward position of the kneeling saints, and the hills in the background that tumbled into the picture. While standing in front of the painting, art critic Robert Cumming was suddenly moved to research the story behind Lippi's work. He discovered that it had been commissioned for a prayer chapel and was meant to be viewed from a different angle than the gallery wall where it was displayed. Robert Cumming hurried back to the painting and dropped to his knees in front of it. When he did, the haphazardness disappeared. The story behind the painting gave him new eyes. Our circumstances can be like this painting. The scene we are living appears disastrous, and we assume that what is in front of us is all that there is. If we look no further, what we see can lead us to incomplete conclusions. We might judge God's involvement or care based on what we see, but our perspective might change if we wait for more of the story to be revealed. That's what happened to Robert Cumming when he probed the story behind Lippi's painting. Instead of living with his initial judgment, he took time to learn more because he knew things about the artist that weren't compatible with the appearance of this particular work. Something urged him to look deeper into the artist's story, and when he did, he uncovered evidence that changed his view of the painting. When scenes of our life look chaotic and troubling, we need to do the same with God. Job shows us how. Job chapter 42. A broader view clarifies your present view. What happens to Job is like the story of this painting, except the canvas is Job's life, and the apparent carelessness of the artist has devastating consequences. Job feels completely abandoned by the God he has loved and served, and he has no idea why his circumstances have collapsed. His life shifts from immense success to abject tragedy in the first chapter of the book, and only we as readers know the backstory of the conversation between God and Satan. Job knows nothing of this backstory and spends most of the book crying out to the sky. However, in Job chapter 42, Job does a complete turnaround. He moves from defiant rage to humble repentance, and he sees his circumstances in an entirely new light. He still knows nothing about the discussion between God and Satan and receives no particular answers about his suffering. What I want to explore is what turned Job's outrage into trust during this painful turn of his life. Certainly, it's not Job's